Hello and welcome to the Just Mates podcast, where we aim to destigmatise men not speaking up about mental health. Remember to follow our social pages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Just Mates Pod. You can listen to and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor and Apple Podcast. All links are provided in the description. In today's episode, we discuss the physical side effects of mental health. I think Sam will explain why this, but yeah, it's about physical side effects.
Yeah, so admittedly, there's a lot of side effects to a multiplicity of mental illnesses that if we were going to cover everything and anything, it would take hours and maybe even days to go into. We kind of want to have a specific focus on I think the side effects of depression. I know I'd like to touch on a bit on side effects of trauma, but with a specific focus on things that we believe aren't talked about enough.
I think as well, because mental health kind of means mind well-being, like you said, it gets overlooked that there are some physical aspects to it. Mm-hmm. And the physical things are easier to see than the mind. So if you do notice any of these things that are out of character for people, it might be helpful for friends and family to pick up on these and use them as like a guide to see that maybe somebody's acting out for a certain reason.
Yeah, and if you can pick up on these factors, I mean, this is just something from my experience. So when I get depressed, and people can probably relate to this, I get incredibly fatigued and really tired. And that's generally why people don't want to go out, don't want to go outside or leave their room. They just feel a bit useless, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that I just mentioned this to you before, and I've said it to so many other people. Others will probably view that as being quotation marks lazy, but it's not that. It's obviously some days you just feel like there's no energy to even get out of bed, and it's not a case of being lazy. It's just you don't have the mental capacity to even cooperate as a normal person.
Yeah, and it's for the purpose also of the person going through this to know the side effects that could be underlying. So what I mean by that is, if you're depressed and you get tired or you're having trouble with your memory, I'm talking from my past experience here, later down the line, if you don't pick up on that, or if somebody else doesn't pick up on that for you, you could potentially increase your risk of heart attack or constricted blood vessels. So there are almost domino effects of knock-on factors that can come into play that can be potentially quite dangerous and life-threatening. So, if we pick up on the subtle hints of, let's say, depression, anxiety and trauma, PTSD, all that, then we're essentially not curing this, but helping people realize the warning signs. It should be really called warning signs, really.
It's just all of these things have an effect on your outcome. So if you wake up feeling like this and somebody that you know says, oh come on, just snap out of it kind of thing, that just has an even worse effect on the mental state of the person you're saying that to. So, and that will change their outcome for the day. And I heard something recently. If you had £10,000 and you lost a tenner, would you throw away the rest of the other money that you've got? Would you throw away £9,990 just because you've lost £10?
No.
So just like a normal day-to-day life, if you got annoyed for about a minute of your day, why would you throw away the other remainder of the day just for that minute of sadness?
Mm-hmm. No,
it's just a way to look at things. There's so much more you can do with your time, and you can reflect on whatever negative happened, and you've just got to bounce back.
Yeah, makes sense, mate. Makes sense. Naf, should we clear up which mental health disorder we want to kind of go into first? I think we should go into depression.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because that can relate to many things.
Yeah. I think people typically see depression as it's kind of a word that's overused. You know, if someone's having a bad day, then they're like, "Oh, I'm so depressed." And you know, a lot of the time, I'm guilty of this. In a sense, because when I used to feel sad as like a kid, let's say like 8 years old or something, 8 or 9 years old, I'd say, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit depressed today." And then until you get to the point when you actually experience depression, it is nothing being sad, because sadness is kind of going, yeah, I've had a bad day, you know, something's happened to me. And depression is your body going, I can't handle this. I physically can't. It feels like you're going into like a dark tunnel. It's really hard to explain.
And
people that
there's obviously different like stages of depression, and you can have mild or heavy. But to overuse that word probably has a negative effect on others, because then when they do mention it, people will take it too lightly. Yeah, and then suddenly the word doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's like you said this to me the other day actually. It's quite coincidental. You said to me, because I know a couple of people with OCD, but that word is thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
So I know a couple of people with OCD, and it's not just, you know, they want to be clean and stuff, or they're obsessed with cleanliness or having things in order. It actually drives them insane.
Yeah, and people then will, for instance, say that maybe like a plug socket is turned off. That can be a sign of OCD, but to just diagnose yourself to say that you've got it kind of negates the realism of the actual disease.
Yeah, and there's a lot of underlying factors, which, I mean, we're deferring a little bit from depression here, but just to give you a little bit of context on OCD, when I saw a psychologist, what was it, like 2 years ago, because you know about the fact that I check doors and to give people a little bit of understanding of what I mean by when I say I check doors. Like, a lot of people will check the door like twice, right? But I had this experience which I went through for about 3 or 4 years, of checking the door to the point where I pulled it so much that the lock fell off.
What the hell?
So, like, and I would call myself names, and I'd be like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And people would walk past, because I used to do it to my car too, and think I was robbing a car. And it's like, it's not. I couldn't get myself up.
No, yeah.
And you know you're being insane, but you can't help but doing it.
Just, and that is obviously, that is the seriousness of it.
Yeah, and it is incredibly frustrating. And when I spoke to a qualified psychologist, they said to me, well, I won't go into it now, but they said to me, "Oh, the reason that you're doing this is potentially because of this and because of this," and it's kind of built up into the fact that you're trying to prevent something negative from happening.
Yeah.
So it's that constant thought pattern of, you know, A, B, or C could happen, therefore I need to do this to prevent that, and it used to drive me insane. But yeah, let's go into sorry everyone, let's go into depression. So I think symptoms can kind of vary person to person. They can be severe to kind of mild or non-existent. So everybody's experience isn't the same. I know people that have been through depression have experienced other things, such as I haven't really experienced insomnia as much as other people. I've slept an awful lot, more than I should have. But do you know what I'm saying? Nobody's experience is the same as each other.
No, exactly. And I think with depression, somebody's sadness could be somebody else's, like, not happiness, but say, for example, somebody could be and genuinely be depressed about not being able to, I don't know, fix the shower. Mm-hmm. And they could genuinely be depressed about that, but another person could deal with that situation differently and not care about it.
Yeah.
So there's everybody's situation is circumstantial, and it depends on how they how they take away from a certain situation. So yeah, like you said, depression has different levels, but it can mean multiple things to different people.
Yeah, let's try and it's difficult to relate to people because, you know, everybody's experience of something will be different. So if I had a symptom of, I don't know, feeling sick, that could be, like I said, that could be mild. To another person's experience could be quite severe. So
Yeah,
it's quite hard to measure, I'd say. I don't really know within the field of psychology, but I'd imagine it's quite hard to measure in terms of scales. But let's try and relate to the audience a little bit, I think, and you and me can relate to each other because I know we've both been through it. So for me, I think fatigue and tiredness is something which was so severe for me when I've gone through it that it really... It's just horrific. So, what did you ever feel tired when you went through it, or?
Well, I think I was kind of the opposite. It's weird because often you do hear that people like feel like they want to be alone and they just isolate themselves. But with me, I'm very dependent on being social. So I used to, and I still do this a lot, every day. And anytime I'm sad, I will go outside. I won't stay indoors.
Yeah.
I will exercise. I'll excessively exercise. I've been told I've done this so many times. And or I'll spend the whole day outside and not even come home because I'm so sad or depressed that I know that being home in my own thoughts will probably lead me to be even worse. Yeah. So I tend to do the opposite and I become severely active. I'll go for a run or I'll go to the gym or I'll spend an excessive amount of time outside just to avoid being in my own thoughts.
Yeah, and that's kind of the cure for it somehow. So for me, I know when I get tired, I used to get this quite a bit. When I started uni, I used to feel like horrendously tired. And then my friends would kind of encourage me to go outside.
Yeah.
And then upon the act of actually going outside and doing something, maybe something active, going for a walk or run, or even going to the shops, keeping my mind active, kind of, it didn't completely destroy the depression, but it really helped subside the effects.
Yeah, it's like a physical antidepressant, isn't it?
Yeah, the act of actually doing something, and I think we've mentioned this in a previous podcast, the act of actually doing something, even though that your mind is telling you, you know, get lost, I do not want to do this, what's the point? The act of actually saying, you know what, no, I need to do this for myself is...
I think it's just getting to that stage, though, for some people, because some people can't comprehend that they need to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe hearing this, people may think that it's time to overcome that feeling. But it's never that easy. Like it's just as like giving someone advice. They can listen to it all you like, but they won't act upon it.
And I'm guilty of that myself, you know.
Yeah.
I really am. It's kind of. I don't know if we both. I never experienced headaches in depression like at all.
I do.
Yeah,
and I tend to relate my headaches to the feeling of sadness or feeling of being low. Yeah, because I tend to get headaches quite regularly.
Okay, maybe that's your biology, I guess, maybe to how you...
Yeah, it could, like we said, it's everybody's different, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I know to kind of relate to you a little bit because my mum gets when she's feeling low, she gets migraines and headaches like nobody's business, mate. It's to the point where it's like, is she gonna die? You know, it's really scary. So I can relate to you in that sense of how impactful that it can be because like I said, my mum really gets it bad. You know, she used to pop like ibuprofen, like Smarties, bless her. But it's horrible. Let's go through a couple more, mate.
There's a number of things because the main reason for this topic was because I came across this image that someone shared that I know, and it was captioned, "I wish people knew that my mental health is so physical too."
Yeah.
So I'm just going to list literally these 10 things quickly,
Okay.
and then we'll blast off to some of these topics. But so there's a few things here: headaches, fatigue and exhaustion, sensory overload, tense shoulders, cramps, sore fingers, restless legs, insomnia, and heart palpitations. Now, they're just a few of the things that people may be able to relate to, but I think it's just so important we highlight that there's physical aspects to mental health, and it's not just strain on the mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point, mate. Because as we said, the warning signs are the best thing to kind of find out, not just for other people but for yourself.
Yeah.
You might not notice, you might not think you're depressed, but really look at the symptoms and don't self-diagnose, obviously.
No.
Go and see like a medical professional or a counsellor or a psychologist, as I have done and other people have done, because that is the best way. They'll not only tell you what's wrong if there is an issue, but they'll tell you how to kind of overcome it and the steps to take.
Yeah, you're right.
I think out of those things that you've so those things you listed are depression related factors, right? Or
yeah.
Well,
it's just mental health is in general, but yeah.
I think one of those things which isn't discussed enough is almost repetitive thought patterns.
So sensory overload.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I see what you mean. Sensory overload for me was just awful. So it's almost like, I don't know how to put it in as an example. So you might think, I'm sad because this is probably a stupid example. I'm sad because I don't know, my dog died. And then you're thinking, I'm sad because I'm sad my dog died. You know what I mean? So you're observing that you're sad because you're sad. It's like a repetitive cycle.
Yeah.
And you're ashamed of the fact that you're being sad. You're sad because the dog died, and now you're even more ashamed of because you're ashamed of your.
It's just a knock-on effect, and then I think oftentimes like that, you tend to forget what you're actually upset about.
Yes,
and then you tend to become upset at the fact that you're upset, and not the reason for being upset.
Yeah, that's so true, and you kind of disassociate from the root cause of the problem, which is why so many people go to counsellors to kind of unravel that in the first place.
And the big issue with that is because when you do get like that, people will ask you what's wrong, but half the time you can't even give them a reason because you don't even know. And I think that's even worse for the person going through it, because you're now reminding them that they're upset. I know you want to be there for that person, but I've told this to friends and family before, but when someone's feeling upset, of course you want to be there and you want to ask what's wrong. But once you know or you get the base of the topic, I tend to deviate or like defer away from that topic and change their mind. So they're no longer thinking about the issue they're facing, and then we can start to distract them.
There is an extent to which it's good to distract, but it's also good to like hone in on it and then understand it, but obviously with precautions. Just going back to the repetitive thought patterns now. What happened with me and I kind of picked up on it because I watched myself and how I get to a certain point. So with me, the repetitive thought patterns would continuously happen. They'd happen, when I wake up. They'd happen during the day, and it would continuously get worse. And then at night, it would be horrendous. And then I'd have really vivid dreams. And then I would wake up, and basically, my mind would just be a complete like fog. So like I call it a burnout. So imagine a wheel was going round at stupid pace, or like Formula One wheels that are going around at stupid pace, and that tire eventually burns out, and eventually they need to go to I think it's called a pit stop. They need to go to the pit stop to get a new tire. So when your mind is like that, your mind is kind of like a wheel that's eventually going to burn out. And what I mean by burnout is I got to a stage where I couldn't it was like I was thinking so much and getting into such a repetitive thought pattern that my mind thought, I can't take this. I can't take this at all. All these thoughts, and I just couldn't think. I could not think. I kind of blanked out, and this happened several times to me. So yeah, my mind couldn't tackle things like even like daily tasks. It was incredibly difficult because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
It kind of. So if I remember this was in my previous job. So they asked me to do something, and I completely forgot what the guy said within 30 seconds. Because my mind just didn't want to kind of take on any information, because it was almost like it was protecting itself from harm. So, and this leads on to, I know I've gone on a bit here, but this leads on to what, from my experience, this would be different to other people. So I think I've talked to you about this before, Naf, is the kind of dissociation that you feel in relation to depression.
You become detached, don't you?
Yeah, and there's two strains of it. So there's depersonalization, which is specifically a sense of detachment from yourself and your identity, kind of not knowing who you are, and that you kind of don't know your place of being, if that makes sense. And then there's derealization, which is when things and people around you seem unreal. It's kind of like watching yourself from like third person. Yeah. It's really, really odd, and it's incredibly scary when you experience like a really highly intensified, I don't want to call it a session, but experience from it. So yeah, those things, mate, are just horrific.
And they are, but when you become attached again and you realise what you've been through, you kind of feel a sense of relief that, I've been through this, but now look like I'm feeling better from it. Yeah. So I think it's important that you assess why that is happening. Yeah, and your triggers.
Yeah, that is so true. That's about what I was about to say. You know, understand your triggers. Really understand your triggers, because I know there's certain things for me, and I know there'll be certain things for you that if you go into that, then your mind will try to protect itself and shut down. Yeah. And a psychologist, a therapist, or a doctor will help you understand what those triggers are and how to kind of take it as a step at a time.
And I think the issue, though, is a lot of people don't know their triggers. So they don't even realise what's causing them to feel a certain type of way.
Very true.
So until you delve into them things, you won't be able to heal, because you don't actually know what's wrong. And that's why a lot of people will say to you when you ask them what's wrong, I don't know, I just feel sad. Yeah. And that is because of that emptiness they're feeling, because they are so unaware of what's causing this sadness.
Yeah.
So that's I guess sensory overload, we can call that. Should we talk about, and we've also talked about fatigue and exhaustion, should we talk about maybe malnutrition?
Malnutrition, okay. I'm not too up to date on this, mate. Can you give a little bit of a background on it?
So there's many things, like your weight during depression can fluctuate. So some people either tend to overeat, and they take in more than they need to because they feel a sense of comfort. Because obviously it sounds weird, but when you're eating, your jaw's moving, isn't it? And while your jaw's moving, you hear them sounds, and your mind is distracted because you're eating. Yeah, so
I think it's kind of it's also, I mean, I'm probably totally wrong in this because I haven't really looked into this too much. But I think when you eat like sugary foods and stuff, it releases dopamine.
Yes, yeah.
So, you can see why. I mean, I'm guilty of it. When I left uni, I put on a little bit of weight, and I was quite heavily depressed. So yeah, I can see what you mean there. But yeah, I never gone the other way though, where, well, no, that's a lie. I have gone for days without eating because of the experience. But have you experienced anything like that with weight fluctuations because of the?
I used to get into phases because I did during uni, but before I didn't really exercise a lot.
Yeah.
and I used to overwork, and I used to put a lot of pressure on myself. So I used to just find myself snacking all the time. And I think that was just my source of comfort. I was never really fat, but I did rely on it a bit, maybe, because I used to have a big sweet tooth, and now I'm a bit more wary of it.
Yeah.
So I can control my weight, and I get to a certain point and I know I need to lose or gain or whatever. But that feeling of depression can just lead to either an increase in appetite or you lose your appetite. And there's no middle ground. You'll either feel one way or the other way.
Yeah, and it can kind of, like I said, with the repetitive thought patterns, these symptoms in their own right can kind of snowball into other things that are eventually much worse. So with weight fluctuations, yes, you're looking at the short-term benefits of, I don't know, eating a cake or a cookie or something. And then when you do that sustainably for over a period of maybe 1 to 2 to 3 years, you'll gain weight and you'll essentially feel much worse.
Yeah.
And then after, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years of that thought, of that pattern, you could die.
Yeah.
Or the same works with eating. So you could start off with, I don't know, fasting, like you and me both have experience of doing, but somewhere along the line, and I have a cousin that unfortunately passed away from, this is a long time ago, passed away from eating disorder, not eating, so anorexia, sorry.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, we all kind of knew it was happening, but she just couldn't stop herself.
No.
It just snowballed into that. So it can build up, and if you don't watch it and look at the warning signs, it could be really detrimental, not just to that person, but to everybody involved.
Yeah, and when you do that, it can cause a deficiency. So others may not notice it, but like an iron deficiency or just a deficiency in sugar, that you're not getting enough energy in you, that is what can, so then that weight fluctuation can lead to fatigueness, low interest in things. Say if you overeat, you tend to feel slumped, don't you?
Yeah.
Say if you've eaten too much, that could be a reason why people are feeling like depressed as well, because they've eaten so much that they know what they're doing wrong, but they just feel so, I don't know, too full to do anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't really help that there's fast food, there's fast food, there's fast food on every stop. So do you never notice when you finish in McDonald's, like when you go to McDonald's, you're like, yeah, I love this, and you're eating it, and then 20 minutes after, you're like, oh my god,
it doesn't fill you up, does it?
Dildo, what was thinking? So weight fluctuations is something which people do need to pick up on. With me, in depression, you can tell me if they're the same, but you're constantly thinking about your mortality. I find I do that sometimes. You either go from thinking that life is all amazing and there's purpose, and then you go straight to
what's the point?
Nihilistic type of thing. And we've touched on this a bit before. So there is always there is a point to living. There is, I don't hate using the term, you're a cog in a small machine, in a big machine, but you are part of something.
Yeah. And everybody's life is going to impact somebody else's. So
yeah,
you shouldn't feel alone, and there's always a reason to be around.
Yeah.
And that feeling of if you ever feel like you're unworthy of living the life that you have, you've got to realize that there's so many people around you that need you.
And there's also I know me when I get depressed, so I can either it's really weird because I either jump from one to the other. So I'm either secluded by myself in a room, do nothing, switch the lights off, pray to God that I'm going to die the next week. That sounds extreme, but that is what people experience, Or I'm incredibly clingy,
Yes, clinginess is another factor as well.
Yeah, and in children in particular, when they're depressed, it can cause clinginess. I know that for a fact because that's what I I tended to do, and then you kind of become reliant on other people to.
Yeah, you become codependent.
Yeah, and codependence trust me, it's a dangerous thing.
It is, because then you can't be alone, and when you realize you can't be alone, that's very detrimental, because when you're forced to be in that zone of no one's around you, it could lead to some horrible thoughts.
Yeah, and if you feel like you can't take charge of your own life, and I have a feeling that people that have parents that dictate what the child does and what they continue to do in their adult life, that's almost like a sinister codependence. That's there. And that to me is incredibly dangerous, because if you can't make your decisions as a 30, 40, even 20-year-old adult, then that's going to cause a lot of problems down the line, especially when that individual that's taken charge of your life and your decisions passes away or has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, so I think it's that sense of independence. You really need to grasp that.
Yeah.
That even if you've got your parents around or whoever you've got around to look after you, you need to force yourself to be in an environment where you're made to make your own decisions. And I think that's really important you've mentioned that, because once you start to rely on somebody else making the decisions for you, you'll be like a child on your own.
Yeah, and I'm not criticizing people for this and feeling clingy and codependence, because I'm really opening up here because I experience it myself.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a codependence with people who I love, and at first it started off with my mum, and now it's kind of started off. She'll be listening to this, bless her. It started off with my missus.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of rely on my missus like an awful lot, and I still do. Still do for all this, and like when I'm away from her, you might call it love, but when I'm away from her, I kind of felt a bit sick. But I kind of got to the point when I was thinking, you know what, I need to kind of move into a different place as I have, and
it just goes to show that you can find happiness in other people, but you need to be happy alone as well.
Yeah, that's so true. You need to be happy in yourself. And for me personally, that is something I really do struggle with. And to a point, it kind of relates to what you can do and achieve in your career. I know for a fact at the moment that I'm not so secure in myself that I could be fully sufficient and self-employed. I need to be with people that give me assurance and what I'm doing.
I seek assurance a lot, and it goes back to the point we made at the start, that where some people might become lazy and inactive, lazy as in like don't want to do anything. I become the opposite, because I know that when I'm outside, I can rely on a different environment or anyone that I bump into or social activity, because I don't have to think about things alone.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess, my codependency on that.
Yeah, on that actual specific thing that you do, that action. Yeah.
So it's very, but everyone is obviously is different.
Yeah. Did you ever get excessive sweating at all?
I sweat. Okay, this is going to sound horrible, but yeah, I do a lot, and I don't know if that's related to depression, but or feeling of sadness. But I tend to, when I'm in a nervous environment or I feel nervous, I will anxiously sweat.
Yeah, well, I think that's perfectly normal. But like, if you're in a depressive state, I mean, I noticed that I've done it. This more relates to anxiety more than depression for me, which we'll go on to after this, Naf. But like, I'd be in bed, I couldn't go to sleep because I'd feel really hot, and then when I'd wake up, there'd be like almost like a silhouette of sweat around when I'm waking up. It's gross. It's so gross, but it is one of those things. And like, if you do have like a partner and you wake up and there's like a that you ever see those what is it when there's a crime scene and there's around the body. If that's on your bed, you need to kind of talk to them.
Yeah, I think, but people don't tend to speak up about it though, do they? Especially things like that. And I bet you there's a number of side effects that we've mentioned that people don't want to talk about but know that are there.
Yeah, like feeling sick is something as well, and shortness of breath is. I don't know if I've ever told you about it. So we're going to move on a little bit to more towards anxiety, if that's okay, Naf.
Yeah.
So there's one of these things that I experienced first and foremost was shortness of breath, and once you pick up that you're, even if you're not short of breath, but once you pick up on your breath and you become conscious of it, you start to become worried about it, because you realize that it's probably going to scare a lot of people listening to this, but you realize that you can voluntarily breathe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah, obviously it's just like when you told us about the Wim Hof breathing. Yeah. You're consciously making an effort to not dictate, but like decide how long your breaths are. Yeah.
And with anxiety and stuff, I had a little stint from when I first experienced it. So I'll take you back. I can't remember what year it was, but I think it's about 2013. I saw Eminem at London.
Okay.
And
big up.
Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
Yeah, big up. And when I was at the event, it was amazing. I couldn't fault anything. I got in the car. And my mate drove me back in the morning. This was incredibly late. And we were driving in the car back from London to, I can't remember where his house was, but it was like a 2-hour drive. And halfway through the journey, I started having a panic attack, and I thought I was dying. Like, literally, if you've never experienced it.
Yeah, I know.
It feels like you're dying, and there is a strong relation between the symptoms of having a heart attack and actually having a panic attack. So obviously I freaked my nut thinking you need to stop the car on the M25 immediately or I'm going to die. And after that, like, I didn't know what it was. But after that, I started to get continuous panic attacks for at least, I don't know, 2 years, and then it came back at uni. But having a panic attack, and that is anxiety. That is kind of like, when you think of anxiety, the fundamental thing behind it, kind of the worst symptom comes out as panic attacks. And when people, and this goes back to the fact of when people say, "Oh, I'm having a panic attack," when they're stressed, like, no, you have no idea what.
No, exactly, and obviously, as with anything, there's mild and heavy cases of, but it's just that I think the biggest thing we're even realizing as we're talking about things is the overuse of certain terms, which can then just devalue the realness of it. Yeah.
You've had panic attacks before, right?
I've not suffered severely from them, but I have, yes. And you're right. Like there was one time where I was stood there and I couldn't move. Like, I physically couldn't move. I was stuck there. I was thinking about how fast my breath is like going, like how fast I'm breathing. And I could feel, so my hands were beside me and my hands were just trembling, like shaking. Yeah. But I couldn't do anything. I was just stuck there. And I think that's, like you said, I just want to get something up. Like you said, it's that feeling of close to like a near-death experience.
Yeah, it is really scary, like incredibly scary. But like, I think panic attacks is kind of watered down so much when you talk about it, like we've said. And when you actually do experience it, you would definitely think twice. Yeah, what it's actually like. Because you can get irregular heartbeats, beats, and that can turn into like you said, with trembling or pausing or shaking, and creates muscle tension and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think on this topic we put out a post on our Instagram, didn't we, of 5 ways to calm a panic attack, and I'll just list out a few of them. One of them was deep breathing and recognizing and realizing what you're going through. Yeah. So I think it's important, now that we've mentioned it, that we probably go over this. But the recognizing and realizing part is very vital, because once you remind yourself that it's a temporary feeling, it will pass and you'll be okay. You've got to take that fear away from you. So if anyone has been through these panic attacks or is going through them now, or they suffer from them, you need to focus on techniques to reduce your symptoms. So yeah, I mean, so that's recognizing, and closing your eyes is another good thing to do. So it will, I think we found that it said when you're in a fast-paced environment with a lot of stimuli, this can feed your panic attack.
Yeah,
so slow things down
enough. So like, to put this into perspective, I had a panic attack when I was working in a supermarket on a checkout, right?
Yeah.
And it came on so instantly, and I had a stressful day, and it was really, really busy at work, and I guess my body couldn't really cope. So I subsequently had a panic attack, and luckily, this is so ironic, but I was serving a nurse, so
Okay.
she ripped my shirt, like, oh, she didn't rip it off like woo, but she ripped it open and then just like kind of tried to help me, and like was basically seeing if I was actually having a heart attack, and then I kind of sat off. And the best thing to do was for me was to go outside and just walk it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that's really important. Just go outside, move away from that fast-paced environment, and actually look after yourself and give yourself time.
Yeah, it's just changing your point of focus, because at that time you'd be obviously focusing on the thing that's caused that panic attack, but as soon as you walk away from that thought, you can just take yourself away from that feeling.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to just go on there, but I thought it was quite important to, as we mentioned panic attacks, to mention that.
Yeah. What other things have we got listed on there, mate? Because I haven't got the list up, unfortunately.
So again, there's deep breathing, recognize and realize, close your eyes, practice mindfulness, and find a focus object.
What is that app? What is that app that is really good? Oh man, you know the one I'm on about. It's really heavily advertised.
Is it Calm?
Calm is one of them. But there's another one. But anyway, yeah, the apps are really good for that. To kind of understand and not just to help you at that time, but kind of help you understand the psychology and the biology behind why things are happening. So apps are really good.
Yeah. And I think the more you understand what you're going through, the more you can reduce these things happening. And it just goes back to the point of us saying that we don't know our own triggers. And once you learn what is causing these things to happen, you can prevent them. And you might not be able to get rid of it, but for this moment in time, you can realize that this is causing me a great deal of sadness, so I need to stay away from it.
Yeah, and it's I'm not a counsellor or psychologist, so I'm probably not qualified to say this, or I'm not qualified to say this at all. But I have a real fear of you probably know this, but I have like a real fear of driving in urban areas.
Okay.
And that's like a general anxiety for whatever reason. And I've held my license now for about 5 years. And I saw a counsellor for it, and I said, no, not counsellor, I saw a therapist for it. And she kind of said, I know this is like a technique which is practiced quite a lot, but they'll gradually expose you to it. So they'll say, okay, well, you're scared of driving in, I don't know, let's say London. Let's try and get you within, I don't know, 1 mile of London, and then the next week let's get you into London, and you only drive a certain distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the best way I can kind of put this forward to people is people that are, what's that I don't want to say illness, but what's that problem people have with getting in elevators?
Claustrophobia.
Yeah, or claustrophobia. It's something like that. But what they'll do is they'll gradually. So if you're like a psychologist, they'll gradually expose you to the elevator. So say it's over like a period of a week. On Monday, they'll kind of talk to you about elevators. Talk to you about them, and then kind of understand your reasons behind why you're so scared of it, and look into that kind of build up of tension. Day 2, they might show you a picture of an elevator. Day 3, they might show you a video of an elevator. Day 4, they'll take you to an elevator, but they won't get in it. All right, and then day 5, you'll walk very close to the elevator. You'll get within, I don't know, 5 to 10 feet. Day 6 and day 7, you go in the elevator and then you go down. Do you know what I mean? It's a gradual exposure, and you should kind of do that.
Yeah, it's just facing your fears, isn't it?
Yeah. In a general sense, it's facing your fears, and I found that with me and driving is kind of not forcing myself into the deep end of doing it, because that can really cause problems. I know for me, I've had several panic attacks from when I've been driving in really, really horrible areas, and almost crashed the car. But gradual exposure and giving yourself space and understanding why you're feeling that way is really important.
I think the biggest point is to realise what the issue is first.
Yeah.
So you've obviously acknowledged the fact that you're having trouble driving in these certain areas. So that's the first sign of the first step, and then, as you said, as you just mentioned, the gradual exposure to that fear will help.
Yeah, it's almost like you're tackling a demon, isn't it? You're kind of, I don't know how to put this. So there's no other way I can put it really. So if you're fighting a monster, and that monster's got 5 heads, you don't really want to go for the monster's heart straight away. Maybe you want to go for the monster's, I don't know, arms, legs, cut it down to size.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is how you should kind of see it. Take it one step at a time, and then gradually the monster will fall.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not qualified to say what you should and shouldn't do. But I know that's a technique that kind of, it worked for me, and I know it's sort of recommended. And if you do want to tackle it from that point of view, definitely go see a psychologist, therapist, or counsellor to see how you can advance on that.
Yeah, I think it's just as well, when you do overcome that fear, and you do tend to then you realise that you're actually able to do it. Mm-hmm. You start to feel silly that why was I ever scared of it?
Yeah, no, that's true, and it is one of those things as well. So like, I haven't really overcome it the driving thing to an extent. I haven't, because I do, I live in Watford, and I still don't like driving in Watford, or like Bristol. I don't like that, but having gradually exposed myself to kind of densely populated towns and going into areas, kind of not forcing myself, but gradually doing that has really helped me.
Yeah.
If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't even be driving full stop.
Yeah, I think that gradual exposure to whatever it is you're facing will help, because if you don't do that and you are conformed to that environment, you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
So, because it will be all at once rather than taking it step by step. So it's really important that you address the thing that you're going through, and you start to, I keep saying it, but gradually expose yourself to it.
Okay. So we touched on anxiety a bit there, mate, and we've also previously touched on depression. Is there anything else that we want to look into? So I don't know.
There's so many things we can delve into, but I mean, I think the importance of this podcast was to touch on the physical aspect, and I think we've said enough to let people know that there are more things to mental health than just the mind.
Yeah, and I know like a couple of risk factors of. And I don't think we have enough time to actually talk about this as well, but substance abuse is something that you can easily pick up on, and it's often the case that is one of the hardest thing to treat. For people. Everyone reacts differently to, I don't know, drink or drugs, and some people have addictive personalities, and some people it doesn't affect at all. But that is a warning sign for a cascade of almost loads of mental health issues, that if you can pick up on that and help the person or help yourself, and coming to grips with realizing that that is a problem, that can go a long way. So whether it's recreational drugs or just anything, even prescription drugs, because you can get addicted to that, and I know loads of people that have. It is one of those things to pick up on, and we are right in saying that it's almost like gradual exposure, but it's gradually getting yourself out of that habit. So I don't like using this word, but people that maybe, I have no experience of this, obviously, and I know nobody that has been through this, but people that are maybe take, I don't know, heroin or something, their body finds it incredibly difficult to cope without it, so they get incredibly sick. I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, but
I think it's just the fact that when you do hear about substance abuse and someone going through it, you tend to become, and we probably do it ourselves, become very judgmental, but there are so many underlying factors to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that if you do see early stages of substance abuse, or you do see someone going through it, please just approach them in a calm manner and maybe try and delve in the reason as to why they're doing what they're doing. It's not always just because that's what they want to do. They might have felt like there's no other option.
And I kind of felt a bit guilty of this myself with my friends that essentially drink more than they should have using alcohol, because it's relatable to most people. I kind of looked at it as face value and thought, why the hell would you do that? There's no point. You're damaging yourself. You're damaging people around you. And it was kind of harsh. It was really, really harsh of me, because I should have been looking into the reasons why that person was doing that and was abusing that for a certain period of time. So look into the reasons why, and don't just look at it at face value. Tackle it with compassion.
Yes, exactly. Be compassionate. And I think that what we've just discussed about substance abuse can be related to any other kind of issues people are going through. So if someone's not eating properly, try and address why they're doing what they're doing. If someone's not sleeping right and they're waking up late, just speak to them. Ask them, like, is there anything going on? And try and address why they are doing what they're doing, because there's always a reason. There's always going to be a reason behind it. Yeah,
and I admittedly, what we try to do is we do try to, in this podcast, and what me and Naf do in our own time, we do try and relate to people.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, these experiences that people go through are different. On the face value, it might look a bit similar, but you can't just say, I don't know. Say I had a parent that died, right? And this other person may have had both parents that died. That there's subtle differences that kind of differentiate the experiences of what people have gone through and the environment and the context of things. So you need to consider those factors. But what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, pain is pain.
Yeah. There's there might be different levels of pain, but we're all going through something, and let's not what's the word?
Mitigate. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, let's not negate the things that people are going through just because it's not a competition. You're not trying to feel more pain than the other person, and if somebody else feels more pain, it doesn't mean that your problems don't mean anything. Everyone is going through something. We're here to help each other, and sometimes, more often than not, if you help someone else, it'll make you feel better yourself.
Yeah, and it's like a domino effect. If you help someone else, then there's a chance that person could help someone else.
Yeah, it's just like we discussed on one of our previous podcasts, the karma. It's just good karma either way.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Should we wrap it up there, mate?
Yeah, let's call it a day. But yeah, I think we've touched on a few sensitive subjects here. So
yeah.
It's I think hopefully people can relate.
Yeah, I hope so. And if the listeners if you've got any questions or you want us to talk about anything specific, then please feel free to DM us or use hashtag #JustMatesPod.
Yeah,
and we'll look that up. And
I think a lot of the feedback we get drives our podcast, so we tend to cover all the things that I mentioned. There's a lot of things that people have said that we've now addressed, and hopefully we've made things clear for you. But but like we said, thanks for all your support, and it means a lot.
it will, and it also really helps us. It really helps us if you can share and kind of put out our posts and just talk about what we're trying to do with your friends, family, colleagues, and it really does go a long way.
Yeah.
Because,
so if you are listening on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Anywhere else on Spotify or Anchor or Apple Podcasts, just give it a simple share and it will go a long way. It might fall into the right hands.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it doesn't fit the premise of the podcast doesn't really fit you, I can guarantee there'll be someone that that needs to hear these words, and we can kind of be their voice and let them know they're not alone, and we can drive them to other places that they can use to seek help.
Yeah.
So
anyway, well, I've been Nafees.
I've been Samuel.
Yeah, and this is Just Mates. I'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.